Yes. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, thank you, Gary, for this introduction, and thank you here for joining for me. That's fantastic. I'm going to try to do this presentation with full screen, as well as kind of kicking out of the presentation from PowerPoint to show you some things hands-on. Okay, so let's hopefully the technology doesn't fail us here. So, and hopefully some people that are out there have seen a lot of these cushions and this products before, because that will definitely help. But Gary, can you see my screen okay? Does that look fine? Perfect. I think even though you're muted, I think that was an okay. So as you can see, Blake Medical here, and as we're titling the presentation, from assessment to outcomes. So we want to make sure that you understand a little bit more of our product and why you might choose a cushion or accessory depending on what it is. But first things first, Blake Medical. I know we might be new to a lot of you here on the call today, and a lot of you viewing the recording after. So we might be new in your market, but we're not new to seating. We know that we've been doing this since 2007, so almost 2000, and it's almost 20 years now. So next year will be our 20th anniversary. So yes, we might be new to your market, but we're not new to seating. And it's lovely for us to share a lot of these products with you. And where we came from actually was a sister company. So our sister company was a wound care company that was working with dressings and therapeutic surfaces and different therapies to heal pressure injuries and wounds. So our background is quite from that. And the nice thing about our company specifically is that not only are we distributing across multiple countries, but we actually manufacture. So the Geo-Matrix gel that I'll be showing you later today, we make that ourselves. We have a full cut and sew facility. So we cut and sew every single cover. We fabricate the foam. We're doing that all internally, which is exceptional. Because a lot of times what happens when different manufacturers, they can't quite make a custom piece that you might need. So the great thing about Blake Medical is that there's a certain need that you might have to have. We can make that because we do all of it internally here, and we all manufacture that in Canada. So over those years, we saw that there was a need for maintenance-free seating. A lot of the fantastic seating that we've got out there currently do a great job of managing pressure, helping postural support, but they require a lot of hands-on. There's a lot more maintenance involved with that. So what we wanted to do is create seatings that are going to provide a lot of postural support, pressure prevention, treatment of pressure injuries, but also being maintenance-free. A lot of these seats, we want to make sure that when we do have our clients on them, it's going to work no matter what the conditions are, no matter what the type of care is. We want our Geo-Matrix seats to ensure that they're going to be comfortable, functional, and of course protective without hands-on. And that's really why we've done such a great job in Canada over these almost 20 years, and now we've reached almost 15 different countries, is because we do offer fantastic maintenance-free seats that manage a lot of different needs for our clients. But the big thing, right? What is Geo-Matrix? And for the people that are viewing here and viewing the recording later, what Geo-Matrix is and what sets us apart is, unlike a lot of gels, and we consider this Geo-Matrix material to be a gel. So what our gel and how it differs is this is a solid dry polymer gel. Most gels that we see in the industry are a fluid gel, right? So they are in a container, and of course that bag of gel, that's a fluid. So what happens is when we put pressure down in that fluid, when we sit on that fluid's going to migrate away from where the pressure is. So those bony prominents are now squishing into that fluid gel, and that gel migrates away from where that pressure is. Of course, that migration allows for immersion, and immersion's a great thing. But a lot of times that fluid gel, when we're immersing into it, those peak pressure points have now displaced that gel. And so underneath of those high risk bony areas, there's no longer that specialty gel material. They're actually right onto the foam. So with a Geo-Matrix gel, because it isn't a fluid and it won't migrate, that ensures that now that gel material stays under place and it stays in those areas that we want protected. Okay, so as you can see, not being a fluid, it's not going to migrate. It requires that zero maintenance that we really, really pride ourselves on. And the big thing is it's difficult to puncture. And that's a lot of problems with a lot of the other specialty materials, right? Is those fluid gels or even the airs, if there's a puncture to them, they're completely negated. So again, coming back to that maintenance aspect is we want to make sure that when someone is seated on a Geo-Matrix product, they're going to be insured to be protected on that. And as we know, we've got a lot of clients in rural communities that service and repairs aren't necessarily that easy. And when you're on a compromised cushion, it can be very, very quickly leading to someone that can get breakdown because again, unfortunately, when you have a leak, that can completely take away the abilities for the cushion. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and I want to show you some of the gel and hopefully I can get back into my presentation. That always worries me when we're doing these virtuals. So here we go here. Hopefully everyone can see that. The Geo-Matrix gel here, right? So I don't know if you've ever seen that before and hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. Yell at me, Gary, if you can't see that. But this is what the Geo-Matrix gel looks like, right? So as we can see, when it comes to a maintenance thing, this stuff is extremely durable, right? So this is my solid dry polymer gel. So as you can see, I'm holding it vertically, and unlike if this was a fluid pack, this would migrate down, right? The Geo-Matrix gel doesn't do that. As you can see, extremely durable stuff, right? We can make sure that it's going to be extremely difficult to puncture, right? Here's me. Kind of creepy, but that's the nature of the gel, which is fantastic. And of course, being resilient as it is, even with all that stretch and immersion, it's that resilient because the polymers that we're using in that gel facilitates that stretch and that reaction. So with the Geo-Matrix columns, we can see we've got all these multiple columns that are in that gel itself. And we're going to get into a little bit of the features and why the columns are so important. And really the material and combining that with the columns, that means a lot. And we'll get into some of those factors. And hopefully everyone's going to have a chance to, again, get and feel some of this gel later on, because really getting your hands on it, getting your bums on it is the most important thing to really see how and why your clients might need one of these products. Okay. So like I mentioned, the solid gel allows us to engineer those shapes, and those Geo-Matrix columns are the shapes that we choose to engineer, because with those columns, that allows us to do multiple things. As you can see in this little slide here, it's going to be comfortable. We're going to increase sit times. We redistribute pressure well. There's microclimate management, vibration dampening, and shear and friction reducing. But let's get a little into more of that and why that matters. So this is the slide that I like to say that you guys have a hard job, and thank heavens that I don't have to prescribe, because these are all the external factors that you need to basically manage when it comes to selecting seating, right? These are just the external factors, not even considering the internal factors, right? So hygiene, living conditions, medication, friction, shear, the clothing that they're wearing, the moisture, their transfer style, their transfer slings, restraint use, and support surfaces. These are all the things that you need to juggle when it comes to selecting the proper seat. It's not an easy task, and a lot of times you're not going to get the perfect solution with a lot of these, and some of them you have to consider one more heavily than the other. So with our Geo-Matrix cushions, what we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate as many of these external factors as we possibly can. Of course, we're not going to be able to manage the medication, but for a lot of them, there's a lot of things that we can do to manage that. Okay, so let's start looking at some of those external factors. Pressure injuries, right? That's the one of the number one concerns when it comes to cushions is the pressure injuries, and how do we treat and how do we prevent, right? But the big thing, and this is some Canadian statistics here, but I've seen all over the world, a lot of them are very, very similar, and hopefully yours aren't as dramatic as these. But basically what we're seeing is that 1 in 4 people that get into the healthcare system are going to get a pressure injury. 1 in 4, 26% of the people. And astoundingly, 70% of those pressure injuries were preventable, right? So because when we factor a lot of those external factors in there, right, those were preventable. And again, as you can see, the cost to heal is insane. So when we have those high costs to heal those injuries, that's a big load into the healthcare system. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to manage a lot of those preventable injuries when it comes to pressure. And that's what happens when we get our Geo-Matrix gel. So as you saw in my little demo there, we showed you the columns. So what those columns do is when there's pressure or weight on them, those collapse under those pressures. So the only case where collapsing under pressure is a good thing, that's us. We collapse under pressure in a good way. So those columns collapse, allowing for immersion. And the big thing with that, right, is that the more immersion I get, the bigger the surface contact with. So it's key when it comes to redistribution and seating is that I want to make your bum as big as possible. The bigger I can make your bum, the more surface area I can then load that pressure into. Okay, so those columns collapsing do a great job of allowing for more surface area, and that's key to a lot of that. But the big thing is the peak pressures, right? Peak pressures is a lot of times where we're going to get most of that breakdown and where those pressures injuries are going to occur. Okay, so we'll stop sharing and I'm going to show you another thing. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see this again. So here's our columns, right? And then so when I have a peak pressure pushing on the gel, sometimes it's a little hard to show online here, but when I have a peak pressure point that goes into the gel, the neighboring column walls around that are helping to load that pressure. So even though I'm making contact with just these columns here, all these neighboring column walls around it are helping to share that load, right? So we like to use an analogy here in Canada about snowshoeing, right? You have that centralized weight and pressure, and you're distributing it over that larger area like a snowshoe, and you get flotation in the snow. When it comes to this, I'm taking that peak pressure point, and all these columns that are load sharing help support and weigh that peak pressure point. And what that does is that reduces the overall peak pressure point that's in that area by those columns load sharing. So because they're supporting that peak pressure point, it creates that larger footprint underneath that high peak pressure point. So not only do we get the columns collapsing to give us that immersion, increasing the amount of bum that we've got in the cushion, but then with those peak pressure points, we're really redistributing that peak pressure point through those neighboring columns. And that's why the Geo-Matrix columns are so important, right? Is because if they weren't interconnected, if they were just individual pillars, then I'm not going to be able to get that same type of load sharing. And hopefully that makes sense. Okay, now back into the presentation. And again, I encourage you as well when you do get a chance to get your hands on it, see what we're talking about. When you use that peak pressure point, you push on it, you can see how the load sharing works and feel and squish that gel and see that type of immersion you get, which is always so cool. But another one, right? Another one of those 12 external factors that we want to manage is shear reduction. And we know that when shear is present, where there's pressure, it's going to amplify the risk by 2 times, right? We're seeing that from Wounds Canada. They've done their studies. We're seeing even more studies now where that could even be higher. So hopefully we'll have a little bit more data on that quite shortly as well. But we know that where shear is present, it's going to amplify the risk of pressure, right? So why would we not manage shear? Because everyone is going to have shear when they're in a seat, right? So shear, as I'm sure all of us know here, shear is that internal force, right? So when we're moving our bodies, our bums around that cushion, that basically those bones in the pelvis are going to be shearing through tissue. And so what we're trying to do with the Geo-Matrix columns is we're going to reduce that reactionary force that's happening because we have those individual segments of columns. So when I'm moving around on my cushion, those segmented gel columns are doing a great job of reducing that shear because the cushion or the Geo-Matrix columns can really move with us, right? So reducing the shear by allowing us to move through the seat, which is ever so cool. Okay, so shear is going to be reduced because that segmented columns move with the body. Okay, and that greatly reduces that reactionary force. Okay, so pressure, shear, managed through those columns. Moisture, right? Another one of those external factors that can be so troublesome. So moisture, of course, when we get the skin to be moist, and that's going to reduce a lot of the skin's ability to heal. And the amazing thing about all gels, fluid gels as well as our Geo-Matrix gel, is all gels tend to be cooler than ambient temperature. So what happens is when we're seated on gel, it has that great ability to feel cooler, right? So we're going to ensure that the skin doesn't heat up as fast as, say, your conventional memory foams, that kind of thing. We want to make sure that that skin is slightly cooler. And even with our the columns themselves and our GeoFlow air gel, it allows for that movement of air through the foams, through the gels, so we can help manage some of that microclimate. And not necessarily a moisture thing, but when it comes to a temperature thing, the really neat thing about the polymers and the proprietary mix that we're using when it comes to making our Geo-Matrix gel is that our gel has a great ability that even when it's, I think the coldest that it got for me here in Canada this year was about -28. And even at -28, that gel still is nice and pliable and soft, right? But when we get a lot of aqueous fluid gels or memory foams, what happens is when they start to get cooler, and I'm not even talking -28, but when they get cooler, they get firm, right? And firm is terrible when it comes to immersion, right? If it's something is too firm, we're not going to get that immersion. It's not going to be comfortable. So ensuring that the properties of the gel itself allows them to be pliable and still give that soft immersion. Those columns can still collapse in order to get that immersion, even at all temperatures. And even with warmer temperatures, a lot of those fluid gels and even airs, right? Airs are going to change their densities at different temperatures. But with fluid gels, when they get warm, they also get a little bit more runny. And with your gels, your Geo-Matrix gel, at cold temperatures, at warm temperatures, they're going to be very similar. So we're not getting a very soft, squishy gel at high temperatures, and we're not getting a rock hard gel at freezing temperatures. So we're getting you a kind of again, a maintenance-free cushion that can operate through a wide multiple temperature ranges. Hygiene, again, one of those external factors. So the great thing and the cool thing with the Geo-Matrix gel is that your Geo-Matrix gel is hydrophobic. So going back to when I said at the beginning, this is a solid dry polymer gel. So solid being like a closed cell material. So unlike a foam, foams are very porous, right? That's why they have all those air bubbles in them. So what happens with foam is that it's going to absorb materials, incontinence, moisture, that kind of thing. So when it comes to cleaning the product, it makes it a little more difficult. So being that this gel is a closed cell material, meaning that it's also hydrophobic, means that moisture can't get into the gel. So disinfecting it is quite easy. When we have an all gel cushion, which I'll show you with when we get into some of the seating, these multiple layered all gel cushions, the gel can be separated and machine washed in a front loading washing machine. So when you're trying to clean or disinfect a cushion, it now no longer requires something to be hand washed, right? I can separate my Geo-Matrix gel layers from my cushion covers, throw them in a front load washing machine to clean them. So very, very cool. So now thinking about multiple patient use and disinfection and hygiene, now I'm able to really disinfect and clean that Geo-Matrix gel quite easy. Very easy in an all gel cushion. And a lot of our cushions that we sell when someone needs a little bit more support, a little bit more postural support, we have a foam and gel combination. And being that the Geo-Matrix gel is on top, it's quite easy to spray, disinfect, and wipe those down to ensure that, again, we're cleaning that cushion properly. And because the Geo-Matrix gel is hydrophobic, if that gel is on the top of that foam, nothing can penetrate through from the seat into the foam, because the gel is essentially protecting the layers of foam underneath. So we're doing a great job of preventing or ensuring really that the foam has a longer lifespan, because it's not absorbing all that lovely incontinence that we want to keep out of foam. Okay. And the big factor when it comes to why these things are machine washable, other than being closed cell foam, is because of the gel's ability to be so durable, right? And I showed you at the beginning how we're stretching the gel so easily. And that was extremely important, right? Is that because I can stretch them so easily, that allows that gel to be banged around in a front-loaded washing machine to ensure that we can clean it properly and the gel won't cause any damage, because again, the gel is so durable. We do worry about any washing machine that might have an agitator. If it's got the agitators, we worry about the gel kind of, stretching and all around that. So I don't want to be the cause for a damaging of an agitating washing machine. So front load washing machines, no problem. But anything with an agitator, I would stay away from that just in case it might damage the washing machine. I don't know if Gary would be up for paying for someone's washing machine. Probably not. So stick to the front loaders. Other things to consider. This isn't a part of those 12 external factors, right? This is kind of new when it comes to wheelchair seating selection, and that's vibration dampening. We're seeing a lot of new studies coming out about whole body vibration, especially when it comes to power chair users. And it's going to be really, really exciting to see what happens in the next few years as we're putting more research and development into what happens with power chair users and whole body vibrations. And we know ourselves, if you're in a car for a long period of time, just that constant vibration, right, leads to a lot of fatigue, right? And fatigue, when your body is fighting that vibration, those micro vibrations, the muscles fatigue, and then your postural and your posture suffers, right? So you're leaning on the armrest, your posture is terrible, and that's just with fatigue. But whole body vibration, as you can see, leads to the fatigue, nerve damage, stomach problems, headaches, loss of balance, shakiness, and that's all just from whole body vibration. And there's a slew of a lot of other long-term effects when it comes to whole body vibration. But luckily for us, the Geo-Matrix gel has an amazing ability to dampen a lot of that vibration. And that was kind of a cool story that happened kind of unbeknownst to us. Basically, when the National Research Council up in Ottawa, so our nation's capital, they were doing some studies on whole body vibration for our military helicopter pilots. And they were finding that a large percentage of our pilots weren't able to make retirement due to long-term back disability. And a lot of that came down to whole body vibration. So they used some of our Geo-Matrix gels in their shaker table tests. And they found that they were able to increase the safe operating time by almost 3 times. So just with Geo-Matrix gel, we're able to increase the flight time for these pilots, so reducing that whole body vibration. So that study kind of spun off a whole bunch of other studies for vibration dampening, and we're starting to now invest a little bit more in that research when it comes to power chair users. And anecdotally, if you ever have a chance to get on a power chair with a Geo-Matrix cushion, you'll see that the road vibration is greatly negated, and a lot of that vibration is reduced because of just the gel's ability to dampen the vibration. And you'll see that it's quite remarkable. And that's not just vibration a couple different ways. The high frequency vibrations, the small vibrations just from roads, right? Smooth roads still have the vibration, the working of the motors in the power chair, that has a vibration, right? But also those impacts. So every time we hit those crack, 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 cobblestone is obviously a lot worse. So when you're hitting all those high impact vibrations, that does a lot of damage too, because your body's constantly trying to fight it. So having Geo-Matrix gel reducing a lot of that vibration is going to help with a lot of our postural positioning in the chair, because the body has a less need to fight off that vibration. So hopefully a lot of that was some good information for you guys when it comes to factoring in some of those external factors when you're trying to select a wheelchair cushion, right? So I'll go back so that we can look at those again, right? Hygiene, living conditions, medications, pressure, friction, shear, clothing, moisture, transfer slings, restraint, loose, and support surfaces. So just with a low maintenance Geo-Matrix cushion, we can really minimize a lot of these external factors with just the selection of the seat. Of course, some of those you'll have to weigh more heavily than others, but at least a lot of those manageable external factors can be negated by some of the Geo-Matrix products, right? Thinking about that one of those first slides, that 26% of people will be getting a pressure injury in the healthcare system, and 70% of those are preventable. So being able to manage those preventable injuries is key. So now we're going to get into a little bit more of the Geo-Matrix team and some of our seating. Okay, so the first cushion we're going to be showing you is the Geo-Matrix Gold cushion. So this is an all gel cushion. As you can see, we've got a green layer on the top and blue layers on the bottom. And the big thing when it comes to the Geo-Matrix gel is there's two different things that we can do to change how that gel is going to feel or react. The one thing is changing the mix, the cake mix we call it. So we've got the green on the top and the blue on the bottom. The blue is made with a firmer polymer. So that polymeric mix that we're using has a firmer, more supportive feel, and the green is softer. So the reason why the green's on the top is that that's going to allow for more immersion, to allow for us to sink into that cushion, to increase that bum shape like we want. But then the blue being on the bottom, more supportive to ensure that we're not going to bottom out, and ensuring that we're getting the proper weight capacity and the proper support in the cushion. So that's one, right? We can change the cake mix that goes into there. Or the second thing is we can change the thickness of that column, right? The thinner the column, like when I showed you the pillow top gel that had a thinner column, that's going to deflect easier, right? That's going to allow for that columns to collapse easier. The thicker the column, the more support it's going to have. So by playing around with the cake mix and the thickness of the column, we can really do a good job of engineering the immersion that we're getting into that cushion. Okay, and I encourage you to try a lot of these cushions. Again, as you saw at the beginning, we've got 15 different cushions. We're not going to try to get into 15 of these cushions today, but there's a wide range. And these all gel cushions, as you can see, quite easy. You think about vibration dampening, the machine washable ability that I talked about. You just separate those 3 gel layers, throw them in the wash machine to clean, which is fantastic. And one of the big things is, when it comes to these flat dynamic cushions, right? So they're a flat top dynamic cushion, so it moves with the user, so it's going to adapt to however that person is put into their seat. The great thing about these cushions is, and I see it unfortunately too often, is that cushions are a lot of the times put in incorrectly, right? So there's 8 different ways you can put a wheelchair cushion into a wheelchair, and only one of those 8 ways is correct, right? So the nice thing about the Geo-Matrix cushions and the all gel formats is that 4 of those 8 ways is the exact same, right? It doesn't matter if it's north, east, south, or west, it's going to always react the same. Of course, depending on width and depth, that could change, but it's the exact same cushion, even in all those four directions. If it's upside down, using it the opposite way, so the blue gel layers are now on the top, then it's still going to give you squish. It's still going to give you that shear reduction. It's still going to, those columns are still going to allow you to collapse into it. Still going to allow for vibration dampening. It's going to just be a little bit firmer, right? So maybe not quite the feel that we want. We want to transition that immersion through those softer layers into the firmer ones. But that even if that cushion's upside down, I like to say that it is the best cushion in the world upside down, right? Because you're still getting those columns, allowing you for collapse, immersion, shear reduction. It's just not as we intended. It's not going to be as soft and as immersive. But again, better than any other cushion upside down in the world. So, and that unfortunately happens all too often. And that ideal user for that cold cushion, great for a power chair user that can benefit from a lot of that vibration dampening. They have a little bit more trunk control, right? We've got those dynamic cushions, like a lot of air cushions that allow for a lot of that movement. Someone that has a little more trunk control, that tends to be better. We're not going to get the same type of pelvic stability we would in, say, some of our other seating. But again, awesome for someone that moves around in their chair or gets placed in their chair multiple different ways, because those flat dynamic cushions do a great job of adapting to whatever shape or however that person's going to be sitting into it. And long-term care, we love these things because, again, it's completely maintenance free, it's easy to use, and it's very, very easy to clean. And now we'll get into some foam and gel combinations. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to start with the hybrid deep. This cushion is awesome for someone who requires a little bit more of pelvic stability, and we'll get into some of those pieces. But what I want to do is I want to kick off the presentation again here, and hopefully I'm going to be able to show you this with my computer here. And so a lot of times when it comes to a lot of cushions, especially foam and gel combinations, is that I think we can see that okay. Yeah. So when it comes to foam cushions, it's a lot of different cushion manufacturers will use two different types of foams, maybe a specialty material. When it comes to the hybrid deeps, the hybrid cushions, the hybrid series of cushions, we're using 4 different types of foams, and we're using the Geo-Matrix gel on top of that. So the first foam type of foam is a closed cell foam base. And then on the sides of the cushion, we're using these foam triangles. So we've got these closed cell foam wedges that go on the side. So that is going to create a lot of lateral stability for us, right? So when we have those closed cell laterals, that allows that cushion to have a little bit more stability laterally, right? And even on the back, we've got a posterior wedge that fits in there, right? So a lot of times when you look at our cushion, you'll see that closed cell from the side, and it will look like that there's a 2-inch piece of closed cell foam bottom. It's not actually that thick. It's just because you see the size of those lateral wedges that go into that. Okay, so it creates that lateral stability. Because inside of that, we've got our second different type of foam, and that is our high resilient base. And as you can see, it's tapered on the sides and on the back to kind of perfectly fit into those closed cell foam wedges. So now we've got that cushion that fits in ever so lovely there. And you can see on the side of that closed cell, or this resilient high density high firmness foam base, is it's got this little ramp built up. So that's going to create our ischial blocker or ischial shelf, whatever you'd like to call it. And that helps prevent sliding forward. So that's again why I love it for postural positioning. In the back, we've got our third different types of foam, and this is a sacral shelf. So that, I like to say that when it comes to this piece here, it ensures that we don't have any of that excess tissue, or the tissue that we want to ensure is underneath our higher risk areas. It's going to make sure that we've got all that tissue that stays forward. As you can see, there's a nice generous sacral notch here. So even if someone is kyphotic and they tend to sacral sit a little bit, that we're not going to have any interference with their sacrum on it. Now our fourth foam that goes in is our nice, soft, immersive, high density injected foam. And as you can see, that all fits in beautifully. We've got 8 different components that go into making one simple cushion, right? So this simple cushion isn't so simple because there's a lot of engineering that went into that. 4 different types of foams, plus the gel, and 8 different components when it comes to the different wedges and all that kind of thing. So now that you know a little bit of what's going on inside of it, let's go back to the cushion. So Hybrid Deep, one of our most prescribed cushions for someone who requires a little postural positioning. So again, you can see in the back how it has those humps. So those are our trochanteric shelves. So they do a wonderful job of allowing the ITs to kind of immerse in between those trochanteric wells. So the ITs get a little bit more immersion, so we get a slight partial offload essentially into the greater trochanter. So not a true offloading cushion, but they do a great job of managing those ITs on that angled Geo-Matrix gel and load partially through the greater trochanter. Got an awesome ischial shelf in the front to help prevent sliding, and then great generous leg troughs and a pummel to ensure, again, that's why we want someone that does want a little bit more of that postural stability to be on that Hybrid Deep. And with all of these cushions, like you'll see in this, the Hybrid Deep, as well as the hybrid, you'll see that the gel also waterfalls over the front of the cushion. And that's important. So if you're ever into any tilt situations where someone is being put into tilt, now we're protecting the backs of the legs with that Geo-Matrix gel. And yeah, we're reducing shear, we're reducing pressure, we're improving comfort just by having the gel on there. Even that someone that is making constant contact with the fronts of their cushion, we can ensure that someone's getting a little bit more protection with having that waterfall on the front of the gel. The hybrid versus the hybrid deep, you can see that it's a lot more of a flat contour. So this is a lot less aggressive than what the hybrid deep would be. The hybrid deep, great for that postural support stability. Maybe someone who's a little bit more bony, maybe someone that sits a little more kyphotically, tends to slide. The hybrid cushion, a lot more flat. This allows someone to reposition themselves a lot more easily. This doesn't have a sweet spot in it per se. So as someone repositions themselves, or transfers onto the cushion themselves, this might be a great cushion for them because, again, it's quite easy to transfer on and off of. There's not that sweet spot, but again, still has the same types of four foams that went into the hybrid deep. It just doesn't have that issue shelf built up, nor those trochanteric shelves. Okay. With both of those options, those also have low profile versions as well. So the heights go from a 3.5 in the leg trough for the original versions and 2.5 when it comes to the low profile version. So the reason why you go to a low profile would be that it's a floor to seat height issue. You want to lower that floor to seat height. These low profile versions are a great option. Also, what we find with low profile cushions that might be someone who's a little bit more active and they would want a firmer cushion. So to ensure that we get the proper weight capacity on those cushions, we firm up that top foam in order to give it a little bit more oomph to it. It's going to be a little bit more firm, but also give a little bit better power transfer. So if someone does want a firmer cushion than say the original versions of the hybrid or hybrid deep, those low profile versions will be a good option because it will be slightly more stable because it doesn't have the same type of immersion that the original versions would. The split cushion. This is the most popular cushion currently right now in Europe for us, and because it has a multitude of really cool positioning options. And so with this cushion here, as you can see, a split down the middle, which allows us to really articulate that cushion quite easily. What you won't see is that on the back of that cushion, there's also a fifth foam. So the hybrid and hybrid deeps had 4 different types of foams that went into this cushion. This split cushion has 5 different types of foams. That additional fifth foam allows for flexibility for the cushion because, and I'll go live here in a minute to show a little bit more of the split because it's a little bit more involved, and I encourage you to reach out to your rep to kind of maybe get you a little bit more hands-on with this cushion. But we need flexibility in this because underneath those leg splits, you can see that black foam that's underneath each leg. So those are 2 wedges under each leg, and those can be removed, one or both, to drop that leg. So if I'm noticing during assessment that maybe I have a different hip range and I want to open up one hip or both hips, I can pull out those leg wedges and really open up the hip angle. Really, really cool, really easy to do. And the thing I really, really love about this is that a lot of times you're going to notice during that assessment that you've got a different hip range in each hip, right? So each leg's going to need different range. So by doing this, you can really tailor that cushion specifically for each needed hip range and hip angle. And that's right out of the box, right away to go. A big time would be someone who is maybe hand propelling with one side and foot propelling in the other. So when you have these hemi propellers, trying to set that chair up so that you lower the floor to seat height enough to allow for that one foot to be able to make contact and propel and still allow for enough contact underneath the manual side where their foot is going to be on a leg rest. A lot of times there's not enough contact underneath the thigh because you've lowered that floor to seat height. So when their foot is on the footrest, now I'm getting no contact underneath that meaty thigh, which does a great job of managing pressure, right? So being able to load up that thigh helps reduce pressure in the IT. So being able to set up that cushion so that one side's low, one side's high allows us to get all that pressure redistribution in the proper alignments, which is so fantastic. And also, which is nice about the split, it's not only just the inside of that cushion underneath the thighs that allows for to change that, but inside we also have these wedges. So as you can see in the bottom left here, you can see that you can remove the insert that's underneath of that cushion. So the insert that comes with it, you can pop it out and you can change the insert that goes into that cushion. So if someone requires possibly a little bit more immersion, we put that gel infused memory foam insert inside there. The Geo-Matrix gel is still on top. The insert goes underneath of that. So that the gel facilitates, because it stretches and immerses so well, the gel will facilitate all that immersion through that softer material underneath of it to allow for a softer, more immersive cushion. Maybe someone is a little bit more bony or requires more shear protection, or possibly is in a power chair and wants more vibration dampening, then we can put the Geo-Matrix gel insert inside that. So now we've got essentially 2 layers of Geo-Matrix gel underneath those high-risk areas. And the reason why it's shaped like that is because those high-risk areas being your coccyx, your ITs, as well as your pubic bone, that's going to prevent a lot of that extra pressure that can happen into those areas. And that's as easy as just unzipping the inner cover and then popping those inserts in to completely change how the cushion's going to feel. So that cushion can work for a lot of different people. A great assessment tool as well. So if you're in a CD clinic, having one cushion with multiple inserts, you'll allow to be able to really dial in that cushion specifically for someone depending on their specific needs. In the upper right part of the slide, you'll see that there's a couple different wedges. And those wedges can be used in regards to the split cushion. So not just underneath the thigh, but the split cushion also has the cool ability that when you've got the cushion under place, you can add a bunch of different wedges to change how that cushion feels. So I'm going to once again go live. Hello, everyone, again. I'll go back to my cushion here. So as you can see, there's your split cushion. There's these wedges underneath the thigh that I can remove. And now, again, you can see how this side here is higher than that. Moving both, now you see we've almost got a 15-degree difference in there, right? So awesome to be able to change the way that chair setup is. But if I'm not doing that, in the inner cover here, I can even add, like you saw in that previous slide, if I wanted to add a femoral wedge, maybe I had some femoral rotation, and so I wanted to correct for some of that femoral rotation, I can add that complete femoral wedge down the side of that cushion to help that. Maybe putting in 2 femoral wedges to create some adduction, I can do that quite easily. But then when it comes to some other types of positioning, and there we see that inside the cover, there's that insert that we can be removed. Hopefully everyone can see that. There's you remove that insert. But inside the cushion cover itself is this soft Velcro fabric. So that means that anytime I have an obliquity, I can then quickly and easily add an obliquity wedge inside that. And because of the addition of that 5th foam that I was talking about, so you can see the closed cell foam wedges that's normally on the back here, we've broken that rigidity by having this soft, flexible foam here. So that cushion is really going to accommodate whatever type of shapes we're trying to put in here. So by adding that that obliquity wedge here, now I've put that wedge in, and now I'm able to correct or accommodate for an obliquity, all while just keeping those wedges. So even if I needed to correct over time, I can add different wedges in different thicknesses in order to slowly correct over time to make it more comfortable during that correction period. Or if I'm accommodating any type of wedge that I can attach Velcro to, I can accommodate that into the split cushion. So again, one of our most versatile cushions, in its getting in place, being able to play with those wedges, to play with those inserts, really allows a lot of our users to get that custom cushion feel without having to go through the time or the cost of getting that custom cushion out there. Even with the addition of having those closed cell foam wedges, underneath the fronts of the legs, that allows for sometimes just people to get a better transfer, right? If they're always doing that hard slider board transfer or that plunk transfer, having that closed cell foam leg wedges are going to help with that. Last cushion I have for you is our Vinga cushion. So this is our lightweight cushion. Again, we've reduced a lot of the elements to it to ensure that it's as lightweight as possible. We've kept that high risk area. So the ITs, the coccyx, the pubic bone, all those areas are going to be that are more high risk, have that Geo-Matrix gel insert in it. The beauty about this cushion is it is a lightweight cushion. So someone who is doing their own transfers, they're more independent, want to pick the cushion up, move it around. This is going to be a very excellent lightweight cushion for someone that manages shear, because again, that Geo-Matrix gel is in those high risk areas. Still has a slight ischial shelf built into it with that anterior cutback. So that ischial shelf is going to do a great job of keeping us back in place. And then of course that anterior cut on the front of the cushion helps us if we are tucking our legs back, ensuring that we're not making contact with the cushion, because unlike the rest of our hybrid series cushions, the Vinga doesn't have that Geo-Matrix waterfall, right? And that's why we're doing that anterior cut. Okay, so Vinga, awesome for someone who's conventionally in more of a lightweight foam cushion, maybe that has a standard fluid pack back there, but they want to have a little bit more increased comfort, a little bit decreased maintenance and the risk of any failures. The Vinga would be an awesome cushion for them to give a try. And now the last few things that we want to share with you today is our accessories. I think this is one of the reasons why MMS started to notice Blake Medical, is because of our accessories and our ability to make these accessories. Because again, we always think about our bums when it comes to pressure and seating, of course, but there's so many different areas that are big culprits when it comes to pressure injuries and the risks that are associated with those injuries. For instance, the one that's on the screen here is our commode pad, right? We've got a lot of users that have lengthy bowel routines and they're on a hard plastic commode, right? So easy to blame the poor wheelchair cushion when someone's getting breakdown, when actually it's someone with an hour-and-a-half bowel routine that's really not getting any offloading and getting no pressure redistribution because they're on a hard commode seat. So it's to really open up that awareness of where else might there be pressures and where might there also be risks. So as you can see, the first one here on our screen is our commode pad, multiple layers of gel, a wipeable cover, so that cover can be washed, the gel can be washed, exactly what you want with a commode, right? And unlike say an air commode, when you're transferring onto this, it's a lot more stable and you don't have to worry about the risk of punctures because that gel is just so much more durable than that. So washable, disinfectable, and of course with a cover on it, allows us to strap that to a lot of different commodes that are being used. And the more of our accessories, and what we'll do is I'll go live again to show you some of these, because sometimes it's a little more fun to see them live. Does everyone think seeing accessories made of gel live is more fun? Because I know I do. So the first one I'll show you is our foot plate pad. So very, very simple. And a lot of these accessories came from therapists or influencers like yourself, because they said that there's a need for this. And so the great thing about our foot plate pad, obviously we've got 2 layers of gel that go into it, but because the material itself is that's going to wrap around the front edge of that foot plate. So if you ever have someone who needs that reduction of pressure on their feet, but also extends their heels and rests their heels against that front edge of the foot plate, that's going to prevent a lot of that impact that's on the edge of that metal, right, or that plastic, because now the heels are extra protected. So just with something simple like Geo-Matrix gel that's maintenance free, we can add those to foot plates to ensure we've got pressure prevention and treatment. Our secondly most used accessory is our hanger pad. And a lot of times when we're using those impact guards or hanger pads that go on the sides of the hangers, a lot of times they're just going to be kind of cheap, crappy foam, right? And when you squeeze that foam hanger pad, you notice that you can really bottom out or pancake that foam quite quickly. And then especially when someone has constant pressure up against the hangers, that's going to create a lot of friction. That's going to create a lot of pressure. But with the Geo-Matrix gel accessories, and I encourage you to, when you get your hands on one, when you squeeze that gel as hard as you can still wiggle your fingers around. So there's always going to be live material, even with a lot of constant pressure against those hangers. And then, of course, the material that we're using is a nice wipeable, a lot less friction surface. So still easy to disinfect and wipe down, but a lot softer and smoother than a lot of those other impact guards that have maybe a more of an abrasive material. Elbow pads for lap trays, same idea, right? Gel hard into those elbow pads, leaning. We're going to be able to manage a lot of that pressure. Now we're just looking at rectangular black pieces, but calf panels, guys, basically anywhere there's going to be pressure, there's going to be tone, there's going to be friction, we're going to be allowing to put a lot of these gel accessories. That's why our foot boxes are doing so well, especially when someone is in a tilt chair or a comfort chair, depending on what you call them. When you have that tilt, now you're getting a lot more pressure into the heels and the calves. So having that gel in there, especially if someone has a lot of tone, is going to reduce a lot of that risk of injury. Arm pads, exact same idea. Okay, so when it comes to our accessories, there's a lot of different options, and again, being able to do any products for a toilet bowl, Marcella. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a pretty standard size across the world. Generally, there's two. There's the elongated shape, and then there's the standard shape, and then there'd be the ones that have the cutout or the horseshoe. So as long as we know that, Marcella, we can make those, and that's a great comment, because that's a lot of times what the case is. Some people want to have straps on them as well. Some people just want them to place on top. Absolutely. And that's, again, one of the great things about working with a Canadian company that does all of the stuff ourselves. You send us ideally a template. That might be difficult, but a great drawing. You supply that to our partners here at MMS. We can work with them to figure out the configuration of the product, and we can make you a lot of those custom pieces. And again, there's a lot of those scenarios where there's just something that maybe not quite off the shelf that would work, and we can do that for you, which is no problem. One last thing I want to add about our gel is that we're using a lot of our offcuts when it comes to the gel in some of these accessories, because we want to reuse that material as much as possible. But if we can't reuse the material, the nice thing about our product in Geo-Matrix gel itself is that any of the offcuts, the little bits that we're not using when it comes to manufacturing, we regrind all that polymer and we re-pour it into new material. So essentially there is virtually zero waste when it comes to Geo-Matrix gel, so that we can continue to reuse the polymer depending on what we need if we can't use it into manufacturing some of the accessories. But that's mostly what I've got for you guys today. What I'll do is I'll share my presentation again so you can see the references here. We're using Wounds Canada. But when it comes to seating and accessories, we've got a lot. Of course, there's more products that we have that we might not be able to show you today, but I encourage you to reach out to any of your MMS reps, ask as many questions as you might possibly have, and they can answer them. And I encourage you to reach out to myself as well if you do have any questions. We've also got a Blake medical rep located in the UK, and Stephen would be more than happy to help with all of your questions as well. But I want to thank you for your time, and now I'd like to open it up to anyone that might have any questions. As Gary said, I will stop the recording.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Super.
No problem. All right.